Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Larimer. I am editor-in-chief of Poets and Writers, and I am so happy to welcome you to a special celebration of this year's 5 over 50 debut authors. This is one of my all-time favorite features in Poets and Writers magazine. We've put it together 7 years in a row now. It's always in our November-December issue. And it is built on a very simple and beautiful premise that while it is indeed exciting to pay attention to new and emerging authors, as so many websites, magazines, literary prizes, and critics refer to that group of writers who have recently published their debut books, we would like to remind everyone that new and emerging does not necessarily mean young, no matter how broadly that qualifier is defined. And while popular culture tends to favor youth, there is something equally exciting, I would say even more exciting, about the work of those authors who have lived more than half a century, some pursuing alternative careers, others raising families, all of them taking their time and learning valuable life lessons and gaining experience that undoubtedly informs, inspires, and strengthens their writing before publishing a book. So to prove this point, one need look no further than the 5 authors who have joined us here on the screen. Madhushree Ghosh, whose debut Khabaar, An Immigrant Journey of Food, Memory, and Family was published by the University of Iowa Press in April. Sari Botton, whose debut memoir and essays, And You May Find Yourself, Confessions of a Late Blooming Gen X Weirdo, was published by Heliotrope Books in June. David Santos Donaldson, whose debut novel Greenland was published by Amistad in June. Shareen K. Murayama, whose debut poetry collection Housebreak was published by Bad Betty Press in July. And last but certainly not least, Jane Campbell, whose debut story collection Cat Brushing was published by Grove Atlantic in August. So thanks to all 5 of you for joining us, and congratulations on the publication of your debut books. We're just thrilled to have you here. So we're going to enjoy readings from our debut authors in a moment. But first, I just want to direct your attention to the chat feature, where we've put a link to all 5 books available now on Bookshop. Please do consider supporting the authors and independent booksellers, very important, by ordering from Bookshop via that link. Okay, so our first featured author is Madhushree Ghosh, author of Khabaar. Madhushree's work is focused on food, immigrant journeys, social justice in particular, and women of color in science. Madhushree's work has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize and received a 2020 notable mention in Best American Essays in Food Writing. She has a PhD in biochemistry and a postdoctoral fellowship in molecular biology from Johns Hopkins University. She actively mentors emerging women leaders in science and works in global oncology diagnostics. She's based in San Diego. Madhushree, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great.
Thank you to Poets and Writers for this amazing opportunity. And of course, all the other authors who are here on this stage. I am so honored. Today, I thought I'll read from my book. I'll read a few pages, and hopefully we can have a conversation about this. This is the second chapter called Macher Bajar, Fish for Life. It's been more than a decade since my parents left. I still don't say they died because they didn't. Not to me. All my American friends whose parents are still alive console me. It'll get easier, Madhu, shortening my name with the casual authority most non-Indians have. It'll be easier with time. I've been waiting for that ease for years now. When I moved to America over a quarter of a century ago, what hit me wasn't what I saw, but what was absent on the street. Absent in neighborhoods, near the ocean, in movie theaters, in parks, the absence of older people. Everywhere, there were only young families, young singles, children, and animals. Lots of well-dressed puppies, and even more tottering, unbalanced children. The older generation was hidden in assisted living buildings behind decrepit malls, in high-rises facing lakes for exorbitant rental prices, or in Florida around golf courses. In 1993, I used to tell Baba when I called home every other weekend for 15 minutes at $2.05 per minute on an MCI calling card. I tell him, it's as if they're afraid of seeing old people, Baba. Like that reminds Americans of impending death. I had arrived in America that fall with 2 suitcases, a few $100s in traveler's checks. In 93, I was invincible, young, and convinced that Baba would live forever. We could discuss the Americanness of this life without worrying that death would ever reach us. Baba would reply laughing, but it's more than death though. The previous generation guides the next. The stories pass from the previous, not to their children, but to their grandchildren. The white people seem to have forgotten that. Shotti, what a shame. I laughed with him, our favorite pastime, rolling our eyes at the follies of those Americans. I was 6 in 1976 when we lived in I Block in CR Park. This was in South Delhi. The house was 1612, Sholosho Baro. That's what we Ghoshes always referred to, our house number. In 76, the neighborhood was quiet, sparsely populated. By nightfall, when nervous Bengalis headed home from work, thugs, robbers, and dacoits from the nearby villages of Punjab and Haryana drove by in search of weary travelers and, of course, nervous Bengalis. As the Delhi winter descended, Ma, Didi, and I locked the sliding doors, turned off all the front room lights, and waited for Baba to return from work at the bank. Every other minute, Ma got up, peered outside, straining against the dim street light, watching for untoward movement. Untoward movement could be a leaf moving, a tomcat climbing roofs, or birds squawking in trees. It was never a lurking bandit. Yet Ma scrutinized every movement, and each movement outside the curtain was deemed suspect. Each time Ma turned from the window and she said, he's late again. Even though Baba had never returned before 8, Ma always waited from 6 p.m. onward and claimed he was late. So every evening, Didi and I sat at the table, homework almost complete, waiting for Baba to return for 2 hours because that's what Ma did, and we did what Ma did. Baba returned singing a long-forgotten Bengali song, and we heard him in the Delhi fog before he opened the gate. I, the daughter who should have been the son, the one on whose birth her Ma wept with disappointment that the Ghoshes were cursed with another girl, I rushed to open the sliding door. Baba, Baba, Baba. There wasn't much to say. We weren't a demonstrative family. We never jumped into our father's arms or hugged our mother. We grinned at each other. That was enough. That is enough. Yes, Puchke, I can hear you, Baba said every day. He called me Puchke, the little one. I was, after all, the littlest of all the cousins in the larger Ghosh family. Decades later, when I returned and all the cousins were old and wizened, I was still Puchke, my nickname, the name the family connected me to. Even now, I have to stop myself from introducing me as the little one. Even now, when I'm almost the only one remaining. Yes, Puchke, I can hear you. Ma followed me outside, hand outstretched. Baba handed her the newspaper wrapped parcel, not his heavy briefcase. The Statesman, a newspaper every Bengali reads, was what was wrapped around the parcel. Ma didn't ask if pickpockets, thieves, or dacoits from the villages of Haryana were on the streets, nor did she ask how his day went or how the traffic was. All she asked was what mattered. Kianle, she asked, what did you bring this time? Grinning, his eyes crinkling behind his glasses, Baba said, surprise, Sheila, surprise. I yelled at Didi, come, look, Baba bought us a surprise. Didi, 3 years older than me in age, decades in soul, walked to the package, stuck her nose close in and announced, Puchke, it's fish again. It's a surprise fish, Didi. Rolling her eyes, she continued, really? So when you open it, will it stare back at us with its big eyes and will it yell, surprise? I shoved her with the fish package, so she squealed like the little girl she was. To this day, Didi doesn't touch fish. I'll stop here.
Oh, thanks so much, Madhushree. So evocative. Thank you. So our next author is Sari Botton, author of And You May Find Yourself. She is a contributing editor at Catapult and the former essays editor for Long Reads. She edited the best-selling anthologies Goodbye to All That, Writers on Loving and Leaving New York, and Never Can Say Goodbye, Writers on Their Unshakable Love for New York. She teaches creative nonfiction at Catapult, Bay Path University, and Kingston Writers Studio. She publishes Oldster Magazine, Memoir Monday, and Adventures in Journalism. Welcome, Sari.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much for this honor and for this event. It's so wonderful to be among everybody else. and to take part in this. And thank you to everyone who has shown up. So this is a chapter also about death. That was a good setup, Madhushree. This is called Losing the Plot. When I graduate from college in May of 1987, I receive a call from the Sephardic Brotherhood. After congratulating me on this auspicious milestone, the man on the phone suggests I begin planning for another bigger one down the road. When I die, would I like to be buried in their Jewish section of a cemetery in New Jersey? If I sign up now, I can lock into their special rate of just $90 a year. I'm only 22 at the time, but damn if I don't recognize a bargain when I hear it. I mail off a check and then go about the business of hunting for my first real job in journalism, beginning my adult life while responsibly covering my bases for the end of it. 2 years later, I marry for the first time, and the Sephardic Brotherhood calls again. Would I like to have my husband, he's 25, buried beside me? Hang on, I say to the man on the other end. Honey, do you want to be buried with me in the Sephardic part of a Jewish cemetery in New Jersey? It's $90 a year. I don't know, my husband shouts back from another room in our small apartment. Can we think about it? I'll get back to you, I tell the man. That weekend, at dinner with my in-laws, we inform them of the wonderful opportunity before us. What? My mother-in-law shrieks. But we're already paying for plots for you and your children with the Spitzenitzer Society. It's news to us that our corpses and those of our theoretical future children are already spoken for, but we aren't about to argue over it. On Monday, I call the Sephardic Brotherhood and cancel my burial plan. They issue a refund. My first husband travels for business, and I live in constant fear he'll die in a plane crash. It's an anxiety exacerbated by my mother's habit of phoning every single time she's about to board a flight and reciting the same litany of worst case information: her bank account numbers, who to call to cash out her life insurance policy, which jewelry I can expect to find in her safety deposit box. Around the time of our wedding, there's a news story about a flight attendant on Aloha Air getting sucked out of a plane when the roof was randomly blown off. From then on, every time my husband flies, I obsess about this happening to him. Each time he exits the apartment with his suitcase, I compulsively half joke, "Don't get sucked out of the plane," and then nervously laugh. Sometimes I say it twice or 3 times. 3 years after my first wedding, it's my marriage that dies. We hadn't considered the possibility that we might both outlive our union. You-know-who gives me a jingle and offers me the chance to reclaim my solitary grave for the same $90 a year plus the $180 they return to me. But I'm struggling financially, working full-time while also starting an MFA program I'll soon have to drop out of, and spending too much on New York City rent and takeout. No, thank you, I say. Each year, the Sephardic Brotherhood reaches out again. When caller ID is invented, I screen their calls, all the while promising myself that someday I'll do the adult thing and start investing in my burial. Someday turns out to be an amorphous, highly postponable target date. As of this writing, I am 56. Well, now I'm 57. My second husband, Brian, is 60, and we have exactly 0 end-of-life plans. We possess nothing even vaguely resembling living wills. We don't know each other's bank account numbers or passwords. Back in 2005, around the time of our elopement, I did sign up for a cheap life insurance from the Freelancers Union for about $75 a month. When the first one of us dies, the other gets $25,000, but that won't go very far. What happened to the super responsible young woman who made the first payment on her burial plot at 22? When I got divorced at 26, I retired the role of prematurely adult Sari, a girl so eager to seem grown up that she married before her frontal lobe had finished developing. When I moved out, I swung the other way and started living up a bit more on the edge, swearing off full-time jobs for less stable freelancing, leaving the staid Upper West Side for the rough and tumble East Village of the 90s, traipsing around it with a string of Peter Pans in threadbare concert t-shirts, 501s, and Chuck Taylors, a grunge-era Tinkerbell in Never Neverland. It would be another 13 years before I'd settle down again with Brian. Until recently, the matter of our deaths hadn't seemed too pressing, probably because we have no children to leave anything to, which of course also means that in our old age, there will be no one to care for us or to bury or cremate us. And also because we're both generally healthy and have always seemed kind of young for our age. But a few years ago, I stopped coloring my hair, and boy, is there a lot of gray. And the other day, a 30-ish woman from the local power company came over to my house, and I overheard her describing me on the phone to her supervisor as an older woman, even though my hair was in pigtails. It's getting harder for me to deny that I'm middle-aged, which is in turn making it harder for me to ignore the encroachment of death. Maybe middle-aged is generous. Maybe I'm way past the middle and closer to the end. I'll stop there.
Oh, thanks so much, Sari. That was wonderful. Our third author is David Santos Donaldson, author of Greenland. David was raised in Nassau, Bahamas, and has lived in India, Spain, and the United States. He attended Wesleyan University and the drama division of the Juilliard School, and his plays have been commissioned by the Public Theater. He was a finalist for the Urban Stages Emerging Playwright Award and has worked as the artistic director for the Dundas Center for the Performing Arts in Nassau, Bahamas. David is currently a practicing psychotherapist and divides his time between Brooklyn, New York, and Seville, Spain. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kevin. It is an honor to be here, and it's also great to be among people my own age. Since this book came out, I've been on a few panels, and most of them have been with people decades younger, and I feel a little bit like the middle-aged person who's crashed the debutante ball, you know, it's like, but it's great to be here. So I'll do a quick little reading of some sections from Greenland. And instead of reading one bit, because the book has many different voices and levels, I'm going to read a little section from two little sections with different registers. So the setup is that the narrator of the novel is someone named Kip Starling, and he's a Black Caribbean British queer aspiring young writer who has moved to Brooklyn, to America, where James Baldwin was from, because he's going to be a great writer himself, Kip. And he has written an historical novel about a real life love affair that E.M. Forster, the great British writer E.M. Forster, had with his first love affair, which was a secret love affair with Muhammad El Adel, who was a Black Egyptian tram conductor who E.M. Forster, who was known as Morgan, met in Alexandria, Egypt during World War I when he was volunteering for the Red Cross. So Kip has written this novel, and he's gotten an agent, but after a year of submitting it, no one has picked it up. So he's feeling quite desperate because it's his life stream to be published. And finally, he gets a call from an editor who's interested, but she's the biggest editor of all, so it's his dream come true, but she has two major caveats. One is that he rewrite the entire novel from Muhammad's point of view. And two is that he do it in 3 weeks, because her publishing house is being brought up by a big conglomerate in a month. And so it's her last opportunity to acquire a new book. So he's got to write it in 3 weeks. So he takes this on. And here we go. Here we go, Muhammad's story. A draft the literary legend cannot refuse. I only have 3 weeks. Time is of the essence. I'll have to work nonstop. I'm not leaving this basement study until I finish the entire manuscript. To secure my success, I've taken some drastic measures. I've boarded up the doors from the inside with 7 planks of 2x4 pine wood nailed across the doorframe. If I leave this room, it will not be on impulse. I have all the necessary provisions with me. 5 boxes of premium saltine crackers, 3 tins of Cafe Bustelo, and 21 one-gallon jugs of Poland Spring water, occupying almost all the desk surface. That's all I'll need until I'm done. I can't escape. I can't sabotage my life's dream. Drastic times require drastic measures, don't they? Next section is from the novel that Kip is writing, Muhammad's Story. Muhammad's Story, a mind like winter. Winter in Alexandria is my favorite season. It's wet and gloomy, but it can also be a strange comfort. It's like when ice is held to your bare skin. It's bracing, vitalizing. Somehow you even miss the burn when it's lifted. You crave it again as much as you fear it. I look back fondly on my winters in Alexandria, especially a particular winter 2 years ago when I was 21. My life changed then. Morgan, he was the icy sting I craved, that I feared. His wintry touch comforted, but then it scorched me too. That winter of 1917 was no different from most. I only wish winters in Alexandria were colder. Even when there's a chilly sea wind rushing in on the corniche, I am stirred to attention like a soldier. Heat makes one slow and lazy, but the cold prepares one for war. I want a mind like winter. Why else do the northern countries dominate us Egyptians? I would love to see snow just once, to feel it. I dream of escaping not only from this miserable cell, but from Egypt entirely, far away from all civilization. What good has it done me? Have all the many books from the great library of Alexandria made me immune to heartbreak? Am I any more fit to survive alienation from the beloved? Oh, to be free and roam the Arctic wilderness. If I were an Eskimo, I could trek through the ice and freezing winds, and I could find safety by making my own igloo. Then I'd know I was truly fit for survival. That's it. And I just want to add, because someone approached me after reading once and said, David, do you know that Eskimo is an offensive term? And I do. And later on in the book, anyone who's from Greenland is referred to as Inuit. But this was written in Muhammad's voice from 1919. So that's what he said then. So just to clear that up. Okay, thanks.
Thanks so much, David. That was great. Next is Shareen K. Murayama, author of Housebreak, as well as the poetry chapbook, Hey Girl, Are You in the Experimental Group? She is a Japanese-American, Okinawan-American poet and educator. She's a poetry reader for the Adroit Journal and assistant creative nonfiction editor for JMWW. Her works have been published or forthcoming in the McNeese Review, the Willow Herb Review, National Flash Fiction, The Margins, Bamboo Ridge Press, and elsewhere. She lives in Honolulu. Welcome, Shareen.
Thank you so much, everybody. Hello. First of all, I want to just acknowledge that I am calling in, zooming in from the Ahupua of Honolulu on the ceded lands of Hawaii. And so I'm going to just take this time to just read a couple of poems from my book, Housebreak. So thank you again for having me. Born and reared on an island here, we're pretty close, all of our families. And I could say that this poem is for one of my biggest influencers, is for my mom. And it's called Salt as Preservative. I was thinking about your mama jokes, how we entertained the ridiculous. Took a picture of her last Christmas still printing. How we're tickled by alternate universes. Takes an hour for her to cook minute rice. Doesn't listen to her doctors. Half of the time, I've become half of my mother. We're a recipient of drop dead, not gorgeous genes. Being the first in the family garners irregular distance from others. When I cried tears of laughter, it's really a heartfelt attempt to draw out excessive water, to create less conducive grounds for germs, predisposed or self-inflicted. It's a method for curing meat. Thank you. And so this collection, my first collection, is not also about family, about self-protection, but also about loss when I unexpectedly lost my partner, my husband. And so this is called What We Do When We Run Out of Elephants. Today, the volume button on my phone stopped working. No, I should say died. I hate saying died. Your voicemails cradled metallic, my pockets too thin. They say 100 elephants are killed each day. A living room, toothless, times 100. They say elephants buried their dead. Tympanic shrills and gentle nudging, shaking against what is passing, tentacular. Olympic silence, not moving. Members of the herd will stay with the body for days before moving on. I hate when people say moving on. Today, the volume button on my phone died. What will we do when what powers us stops moving? A gentle nudge, shaking against what's already moved on. Thank you. Here in the island, I'm very fortunate or privileged that the Asian Americans are the majority here on our island, but still that doesn't insulate me from the hate crimes rising as coronavirus spread over the past couple of years. Here in the islands, water is life, so I'm a beginner surfer for 20 years now, still a beginner surfer. You might recognize some terminology. Here we go. Hate crimes rise as coronavirus spreads. We strive to live in the pocket of the wave where the energy is brightest. On the subway at Lexington Ave and 59th Street, you can pick up maximum speed if you're held by your wrist and shoulder. Uprooted from your seat, I mean your home. I mean your country, I mean your great-grandparents' country. How you failed at making yourself smaller in the pocket of your seat on your way to work this morning. You resist being shot too far ahead before you curl into your mouth, except you find you're standing on the open face of the wave with less energy and resistance. Nasty people should stay in fucking Asia before punching her in the back of the head, rounded out, shipped out, denied entry into a gas station. You and your body are not quite out of water, have no choice but to do a cutback and circling back to the power of source, cutting into what cuts you the deepest. You shift your weight, driving up the face of the wave. I mean destruction. I mean humiliation. I mean a country where a 13-year-old boy spits at your father. You remember that the wall can close out on you with energy to launch large rocks into the air, damage buildings 100 feet above its surface. You remember that your head and chest should face the direction where you want to go. Thank you. And my last poem. So it's not all Housebreak, it's not all doom and gloom. There are bits of current events and there's also big aspirations. And so this is an ekphrastic poem where maybe I was just wondering, what does it take to become a saint? Like there are like 5 steps, right? And unfortunately, like the first one, obviously you have to die. You have to serve God, you have to be benevolent, and after 5 years of death, that they have to make sure that they can verify that there is a miracle. I don't know why I needed to know this during my time of grief and mourning, but here we go. This is my last poem. Thank you again for having me. It's called Saint Jerome, Praying in the Wilderness, after the painting of the same name by Leonardo da Vinci. Somebody, you'll see the 5 things in here somewhere. All right. You tell me the beetle will most likely drown. I salmon forward, stitched a carcass or career. a miracle verified. To serve God, I think of all the bedsides I've left savory and Titian. What does an orchid do of heroic value? I once waited for a cactus to grow arms like a man. A tawny tail, we assembled a caravan of 2 golden creases. 5 years after death, who notices you halved and peached, holding on to things forever like? Thank you, everyone.
That's lovely.
Oh, Shareen, that was absolutely stunning. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so our final reader of the evening is Jane Campbell, the octogenarian author of Cat Brushing. Jane grew up in Zambia and Cape Town and studied English language and literature at Oxford. She has worked as a group analyst, teaching and training internationally for nearly 40 years. She lives in Bermuda and Oxford, England. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kevin. It's very good to be here. Is this right now? Am I okay? This is my so my book of short stories covers the stories of 13 old women. It's called Cat Brushing, which is the title story. And it is set in Bermuda, which is where I am at the moment. In fact, it's set in this house. But I've just taken excerpts from the story so that I'm just reading for 4 minutes. This morning, I was brushing the cat as I watched the rain come across the water towards us. She is a Siamese and smooth-haired, and like me, quite old, and her fur is not as strong or as resilient as it used to be, but she arched her back with delight and raised her head so that I could reach her throat, the most vulnerable part of her. And seeing her respond like this to the strong, smooth strokes, I could see myself in bed with one of the lovers, and my own arching and offering, and wondered when I had finished with the brushing, whether she felt as I had when it was over, not just brushed, but glad, even grateful to have been brushed. In other words, was it the moment only with her, or was there a reflective pleasure as well? When I had finished, she walked away while I stood up with some difficulty. She lies fully extended on the kitchen floor for the brushing process, while I kneel beside her. I find these days I have to hold on to the edge of the counter to get to my feet. But I tell myself it is good exercise for my thighs. And then inevitably, the other exercises my thighs once got involved in come to mind. The kitchen door was open and I could see the water in the Great Sound, which early this morning resembled sheeted metal on which the tiny humps of the islands rested. I walked to the door and watched as the whole horizon and all the sea and the land became cloudy with the strengthening rain. The cat sat beside my feet. We both looked out. I know, of course, that we do not see the same thing. Her perception is different in every respect. I feel the dampness and smell it, and hear the raindrops in quite a different way from her. But she sits and watches it with me, with just the same degree of satisfaction. While we watch our view, I knit, because apparently it is good for old fingers, while the cat does nothing but blink wisely and push her warmth against my thigh. I do wonder if she knows about loneliness, although cats are said to be interested in nothing except their own comfort. The cat and I are learning about the process of dispossession. Aging is often represented as an accumulation of disease, of discomforts, of wrinkles, but it is really a process of dispossession, of rights, of respect, of desire, of all those things you once so casually owned and enjoyed. I could seduce men quite easily once, after I had escaped from my husband, of course. They were married men, and so I was safe with them. We could drown in mutual waves of desire and longing and yearning, leading to brief ecstatic periods of gratification and delight, and an enormous gratitude for the sheer good fortune of our circumstances. We found it so easy to please each other. And that too is another dispossession, the capacity to please. Once, when I arched my back and let out little meows of pleasure, my lovers thrilled with the knowledge of their potency. Now I offer a few inches of knitting to my son. It is a terrible loss. That's it.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Jane. And thank you to all 5 amazing readers. See, this is why this is my favorite feature in the magazine. Such different, such a range of writing talent here, and just so wonderful to hear you all. Thank you so much. So I have just a few questions, just to maybe get a little conversation going about sort of the different kind of paths to publication that you all took. And I just want to mention too, again, if anyone in the audience has a question for one or all of our authors, please do put it in the chat, and we'll try to get to some of those a little bit later on. But I guess first, just to start things off, I have kind of more of a general question, and I wonder how you feel about this. But do you think that, sort of publishing your debuts when you did had more to do with sort of internal or external forces? That is sort of, was it a result of rejections or just not finding the right agent or editor or publisher until now? Or did it have more to do with sort of your own kind of internal clock, let's say? Sometimes it simply takes this long to write the book, or that you want to share with the world. So I'm just wondering if you've thought about that at all, sort of more of an sort of external forces that were at play there, or internal.
You want us just to shout out, Kevin?
Sure. Jean, you can go first if you'd like.
Well, I in my case, it's very straightforward. I wrote a short story. I'd always written something because I'm an involuntary writer, but never written short stories. I wrote the first short story I ever wrote, which was Cat Brushing, and sent it to the London Review of Books, and they published it, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
After that, I got an agent, and then I got a 2-book contract, and then I got, So it was a short story, and I didn't think to write it till I was about 75.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So is that exposure that sort of...
That's my story.
Yeah. Right. Anyone else want to sort of comment on that? Madhushree?
I can go. For me, I've been writing. I come from a family of journalists. When India got divided, my mother's side of the family moved into India from what's now Bangladesh. So we've had storytelling happening for many years. We were all involved in some form of folklore that was then told in modern language. Then I moved into science, and it's and so if you want a paycheck, you stay in science. And so for 7 years during my graduate school, I did not write. And then homesickness made me start writing. And I was missing food, I was missing home. And so I thought, let me just create it using my words. But Western writing styles are very different from where I come from. So I had to relearn how to write for a white audience, which was fine, except that wasn't my audience. My audience is anyone who wants to read. And if you want to read my work, you have to read stories within stories, tales within tales, and keep at it. So I was writing fiction. I moved into nonfiction when my marriage fell apart, and I had to analyze it as a science person. Logic was that I write about it. So I wrote about it, and that's what got to a lot of people connected at many different levels. And then actually I have to say, I wanted to talk about homesickness and childhood, and the fact that I had a very, very happy childhood. And we don't talk about happy childhoods much. in literature. There's always trauma. So, and I'll tell you, my sister will say she had a traumatic childhood. We had the same childhood. And so I wanted to talk about this. And Sari actually took one of my essays, the one that I just read, which then went on to being nominated, and that led to the book. So it's a long-winded way of telling you that you can be a writer for a long while, but the journey is because everybody realized that they wanted to read something like this. And I think I will still keep writing whether or not we publish 10 books after this or none.
Great. Madhushree, something you just said, though, also makes me think, you're talking about you wanted to write about a happy childhood.
Mhm.
And how you write about a childhood when you are in your 20s or your 30s is very different from how or is it different from how you would write about it in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, right? So just sort of curious whether you have thoughts about, like, one of you, and I can't remember which one, wrote about how, the book that you would have written 20 years ago would have been very different from what you wrote now. Yeah.
That was me. Yeah, I write the same story over and over again, people. So you're going to see me say the same thing in different ways every decade. I think it's how you analyze it. And if you're looking at memory and your brain as a computer and a hard drive, how you access that and the different parts and the different algorithms you use to access that will give you different information. So every time I look at a certain situation or look at my parents and analyze them when I was 30 versus now when I'm significantly more reflective of what they were going through with a precocious child like me, it's always a different story. Childhood is a very fascinating part because, like I said, my sister would say, this was a very traumatic childhood because we were always stressed out waiting for, thugs and riffraff coming into our house, whereas I thought it was hilarious that we sat there at the table waiting for the riffraff to show up. So it's how you look at it. It's also, as you get older, somehow you get fearless about life in general. And I think it shows.
Great.
I think for me, I was my biggest obstacle, but I also had, I struggled with, getting things published. It was a lot. It took me a lot of time to establish myself. But then the biggest obstacle was me because I was so afraid. I didn't think I had permission. I was struggling with, how were people going to feel? I had to really explore what were the most ethical ways to tell true stories that involve other people. I spent a lot of time trying to figure that out and finally arrived at something. If you would have told me in my late 30s and early 40s that I wouldn't publish my debut until 56 and that things would get kind of good then, I've been having a really great reception and we're having this wonderful event, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have said, what do you mean I have to wait until I'm 56, 57? But I'm feeling much more optimistic that there's all kinds of possibility later in life. I'm having like the best year of my life. I have COVID now, by the way, very mild case, but things are so much better for me now as a writer than I could have imagined they would have been in my late 50s. And it's making me optimistic about the future, that there isn't a time limit. And I'm so inspired, Jane, by your story of just deciding at 75, I'll send out a short story, and then it leads to this wonderful collection. So I think that I had to get out of my own way more than anything.
That's really kind of you, Sari. I'm looking for a quote which I thought was on the cover of this book, which actually a friend of mine at Oxford told me years and years ago. His grandmother was asked by one of her grandchildren, "So, Granny, when was the happiest days of your life?" And she said, "I don't know. I might not have had them yet." And I think that was that in a sense was also a bit of the inspiration for this, because these 13 old women are all very different and some of them have tragic endings. It's not a book it doesn't have happy endings, but what it does have is life, because I wanted to really demonstrate that old women are human too. They're not just old women. who was it? Yeah, somebody picked up on old women, but they remain fully, they are human beings with all the feelings of human beings. So anyway, that was the link. Thank you, Sari. Yeah.
Yeah, I like Sari. I had a long journey to this debut. I've been writing since I was a kid. I mean, I wrote my first novel on a little typewriter my mother gave me, an orange Olivetti, and it was called the Bombs. It was international espionage, and I knew nothing what I was doing. But I've been writing forever, and I became an actor and then a playwright. But I struggled for many years, as I wrote in the article, I think, of not getting published, and had luck to get agents who recognized that there was something worthy there. But a lot of editors, saying, that they didn't see an audience for my work exactly. And I never really knew exactly, and I still don't know exactly what that means. Was it code for we don't know if there's a Black audience, a gay audience, a non-American audience? Is there the writing just not good enough? I'll never quite know what it was. Was it those external things or not? But I do know that something that Madhushree just said. As you get older, you get fearless, and I think that's true, and I think that helps. Because I think my earlier writing, while I got close so many times, I have so many over there in that cabinet. I have a pile of rejection letters of editors saying, "Oh, I tossed and turned overnight. I almost took it, but I didn't." And I was like, "Just friggin' do it, right?" It's all these, but eventually, I like said in my article, I gave up. I said, "Forget it. I'm over 50 now. I'm never going to have this career that I dreamed of having. I'm just going to write whatever the F I feel like writing." And I got fearless, and I wrote whatever I wanted. And it wasn't to please the editors, because there was no pleasing them, and I didn't know how to please them. But then once I got halfway through, I thought, "Oh, this is good. Maybe I do want to get this published." I thought it was something there. So then I tried to strategize how to refangle the book so that it was more palatable. So I did that. But it's a really hard question you asked, Kevin, because and it's a good question. I've gotten lots of questions in this last year, and I've never gotten that question, and it stumped me. And I don't know what was the real reason that it happened now, whether it was external or internal. I do know that I was lucky in that.
It's luck, a lot of it.
Yeah, a lot of luck. There's luck, exactly, right? There's luck, and we can't ignore that, because there's so many people who have written wonderful genius works who will never hear because they didn't get lucky.
But it's also community, I would say. It's a lot of community, and it's a lot of literary citizenship that you really don't even think of when you're in your 20s. But if you've been a literary citizen without trying to find out what can I do for you or what can you do for me, and you're just doing it for the love of words, it's very different. And so by the time you're in your 50s, you've been doing it for 20, 30 years, right? And you're actually friends with people. Like I haven't met Sari in real life, but I feel like she's my friend, and we are tight.
We are.
So that's writerly friendships are the best friendships ever, in my opinion, and that doesn't happen when you're 14 or 15 or 20.
I think it might, but what I do think happens when you're over 50 is you stop asking permission.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Alyssa Altman is writing a book right now called On Permission. And I think I can't wait for it, because I know that I struggled with that feeling of not having permission. And at a certain point, yes, you reach 50 or over and you're like, I don't need anybody's permission.
I don't need permission. I'm just going to do it.
Same here. Like, I think it was like maybe 20 years after I finished my professional education degree that I decided to go back for an MFA, just to see if I had anything, worth crafting or worth developing. And I was thinking, well, I probably will live to like I'm 80 or 90, looking at my parents' size, their genes and everything. I could be writing for another 50 years. I should start practicing now. So part of that, I guess, was external. And then on Twitter, somebody had wrote something And they said, it's okay to not be a poet. And I had to read that like a couple of times. And they said, they wanted to be a biochemical engineer, but they weren't cut out for it. So it was okay. They accepted that and they moved on. And I was like, I don't know that I accept that it's okay for me not to be a poet. And maybe that kind of lit the fire under me to actually start submitting things. But whether the things are published or not, I think it's more important to do the work, like to get the pieces that matter out to you out there on paper, like somewhere, especially to leave for others to see.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like we could just keep talking for another hour here, but I would like to try to get to some questions from the audience. And I have one here that I think I'm just going to read them to you. So we have one from Elena Brunn, and her question is, to what extent, if any, did you hide your age when submitting personal statements? So I think this has to do with like when you're approaching publishing or anything like that. Was there any sort of I don't know, sort of feelings of not wanting to be out there with the age part?
In my case, never, ever. In fact, I'm proud of being an
Yes.
optionist.
Yeah.
So never.
Good for you, Jane. You're a good role model. I actually had some difficulty. I struggled with it because I met with my editor for the first time during COVID, and it was like this. And my narrator is 37 years old. And I did that sort of on purpose to have him at a certain point of his life. But because there's so many autobiographical parts, a lot of people thought I was a lot younger, including my editor, who said, "Oh, I hope she's not listening. Are you listening, Tara?" Anyway,
they are listening.
But, I'm really publishing a lot of millennial stuff, and that's the stuff I want to do. And I was thinking to myself, and this was before we signed, I'm like, I'm not going to tell her I'm not a millennial if she thinks that's what's happening, because I wanted to get published. But there was some difficulty of me dealing with that and claiming it right up front because of that situation. I don't know. So but I'm, when I got offered to be in this article, I said, yes, I'm going to do it. Right. I'm going to go. And also it's the truth. It's so important to know.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't understand
why
why
we do this our whole lives, and at any age we can.
And as Kevin said, maybe we get better, maybe we get wiser. We certainly know more.
I shouted my age out loud and proud if anyone asked me, because I work in oncology diagnostics. I'm one of the very few women leaders of color. You expect ageism every minute of the way in my corporate world. And I don't hide it there. And I want people to celebrate age because not all of us will get to the next birthday. So every day that I'm alive, I am happy and grateful. And I want people to celebrate their own birthdays the same way. So yeah, I think especially for women and women of color, they need to talk about their age. Enough already.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like we have to own our age. I have a magazine called Oldster Magazine on Substack, and I have a place where I ask, I have a feature called the Oldster Magazine Questionnaire, and I often reach out to people and invite them to take it. And I'm always surprised when people are afraid to put their age. I also respect it. Some people have told me, I work in a field where there's terrible age discrimination. Hey, I've experienced age discrimination. I experience it all the time. But my answer to it is to say, hey, I'm 57 and I am good at what I do. And I'm going to own my age. But I also try to be respectful of people who are afraid that it's going to cost them a job, cost them an opportunity. So, and also it's part of the aging story that some people would rather not tell you. And so it's just interesting to encounter this on both ends.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to know how old you are, Kevin?
Of course. Well,
Are
let's
you
do
over
this.
50? Are you over 50?
Well, I will be eligible for the 5. Well, not really, because I'm the editor of the magazine, but I would be eligible next year. So eight
All
months,
right.
Okay,
8 months, and I'll be eligible. Yes.
Well done. That's good.
Okay, one more question here from Lisa Hewitt. Do you find age enriches and speaks to your writing, or do you find yourself growing young as you write?
Actually, those are not really alternatives. They belong together.
No, but
Mhm.
Yeah, they're not
anything,
mutually exclusive.
right, right.
No, I don't think that. I think you do feel younger as you write about, about the age. What was the question again?
Do you find age enriches and speaks to your writing, or do you find yourself
Yes.
growing young as you write?
Those,
Yes, 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 and yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, all of the
Yes,
above.
yeah.
All
I
of
mean,
the
that,
All the above. Hmm.
I think that there is an enthusiasm about what we are writing now that I don't think I experienced in my 30s. Because in my 30s, I was trying to unlearn what I had learned. I was trying to relearn what I wanted to do. I was also very interested in other people's opinion about my writing and what I was trying to say. And now that I am not, that fearlessness leads to an adrenaline rush that I've never experienced earlier. And you're able to be your own critic. You're able to be your own editor and actually come up with a piece that you don't have to show somebody else and ask them, do you like me now? You don't have to do that. So I think it's a great place to be.
Yeah, I also feel like I've never written a poem about being a specific age as a number. I see it more like as life stages. Some places in my life I'm smarter or worse than I was before. And so, yeah, I've never been attached to that number.
Yeah. It's not really the way it works, right? I mean, the number doesn't really mean too much as you get older.
And the good thing about writing is that you can do it as long as you have your mental faculties. You can do it forever, and it's something that you can always look forward to. I mean, I always have a project I'm thinking of working on, and I know that I've been lucky to know some really great writers who are in their 70s and 80s. Edmund White, who's a legend, who is coming out with more books than ever before. Year after year, he's coming up with ideas, and he's in his 80s. Jaime Manrique in his 70s is creating lots of stuff still. And these are people who, you can do, it keeps you young to write. And the longer you live, the more wisdom you have, right? So your age, these things are not, hopefully, these things are not mutually exclusive at all. They go together. Right. I think.
So we're getting some questions about that sort of are taking a practical approach. And I think it's good to, I want to just open it up to any sort of practical suggestions you may have. But in terms of Madhushree, I was going to ask you about, you were talking about the support of literary magazine editors was really important to you, before the University of Iowa Press, approached you and published the book. And so just if all of you could, if you have a suggestion for a literary magazine or maybe an independent press that might be looking, maybe is more interested in work from authors over a certain age or anything like that, but just suggestions for literary magazines or presses.
Yeah, I think in my acknowledgements, I've acknowledged every editor who has published my essays. And I think it's important that we understand that editors really are trying to make your work better. I've seen a lot of snarky comments about editors that they changed from the first part of the sentence to the last part of sentence, and I'm so mad. And no, most of them are doing this out of love for the words. Please, if you want to take a look at my acknowledgements, there are tons of editors in there from long reads to Bomb magazine to, even op-eds if you're going into New York Times or LA Times. People ask me how I got into some of those. Every place I got in was through the slush pile. Nobody asked me my age. They were just interested in what the work was. Melissa Chadburn is a wonderful author, and she asked me to write for High Country News, which is a California-based magazine, which is also amazing. Samantha Dunn is also an amazing editor. So there are many editors who are actively looking for your work. If it is of interest, whether it's local, regional, for nonfiction, or if it's memoir, the Rumpus is the best example. I think all of us know about them. Poets and Writers is right there. The Writer's Digest, you name it. There's so many magazines. And frankly, just so folks know, for the 5 over 50, friends on Twitter told me you need to talk to Kevin. And so I literally, my response to this call was, the emoji with your hand up, that was me. That was my response. And Kevin said, hey, you. So that's why I say, editors are your best friends, and they may be as awkward as you are. So just go say hi.
I just put in the chat my the email address where you can pitch me for Oldster magazine if you want to write about being old or being any age, because Oldster is not just about old people. It's about getting older at every phase of life.
Right.
So.
Excellent.
And if you look at Oldster magazine at the about page, you can see my guidelines, my pitching guidelines.
Well, just to show how artsy I am, in fact, the journal, I don't know if you know the London Review of Books, but the journal I sent cat brushing to, who published it within a few weeks, don't publish fiction. But I'm an absolute devotee of the magazine, and I loved it so much, and I just thought maybe they'll do this because it's so good. And I sent it in, and they did. So I think actually you also need to just be difficult. You just need to push the boundaries of almost everything. And I'm so grateful to London Review of Books. I mean, they really don't. If you look at their submission, they say they don't publish fiction, and they don't, but they did publish it. And so I like to find sort of high-end places and then just see if I can creep in.
Great.
I like
Shareen?
that too, Jane. I love that a lot. I would say, going back to what Madhushree said also about community, right? So I think it took me a while to understand what my writing was about once I started reading more. So once I started reading 100 poems a week, so volunteering for a lit magazine that you love, because everyone out there pretty much does it for free out of love. And so if that's something that you feel like you would like to support a lit mag and be a reader for them, I think that would also help. You can kind of see who's being published and where they're publishing. And I think that would be great, like to be part of the community. At least it was for me. So standing outside and just wishing, oh, I wish it could be published. Oh, I wish it could be published. Didn't do much for me till I actually started reading for a lot of different magazines. So, yeah.
Shareen, I also think in your essay, I think you also mentioned looking through acknowledgements pages in published books is a really great way to find new magazines to not only just enjoy to read, but also, potential markets to send your work to as well, right?
Dude, there are so many new lit magazines, and so many have folded, and it's again, right? It's out of love, a passion that these editors are starting these magazines. And so, support the artists, turn to the back of the book where they give their credits, and start doing some research on some of those magazines.
Right.
And a subscription to Poets and Writers.
And
a subscription.
Yeah.
That works too. Yes, I would be remiss if I didn't put a little plug into the literary magazines and small presses databases on the Poets and Writers website. It's all free, pw.org. There's a lot of information there, so please do take advantage of that. And I also just want to say, anyone who's listening who is going to get that great news that your book is going to be published in 2023, please send an email to editor@pw.org and share the news. And we're going to be doing this again in November, December 2023. And we would love to consider your book for the next 5 over 50. But for now, I just want to say thank you again to our our 5 debut authors. Thank you so much. This has been just a beautiful event, and I appreciate you sharing your words and sharing your perspectives, and just thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much.
An honor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you
so
all.
much.
Yes,
And go to
Thank you.
bookshop.org and buy their books. Okay.
yes.
Have a great rest of the evening.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank
What a
you.
joy. Thank you,
you.
everyone. So nice to meet you.
Thanks, poets. Wonderful.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Absolutely.
Need to do it more often.
We will.
Look what you created, Kevin.
It's amazing.
Well,
And thank
it's
you
what
to the
you-
F
what you
bomber
want.
for making it real.
Yeah,
Amen.
that was funny.
I guess it's okay to get that out of the way at the very beginning.
That's right. Loosened us up.
I'm not sure how that happened. Everyone was supposed to be muted when they came on, but anyway. Okay.
There's always one.
There's always at least one.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay,
Kevin.
bye.
Everyone.
Talk soon. Take care. Bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.